Hey guys, welcome into the House of Halas Podcast episode. We told you so. Well, Nas told you so, more or less. I'm Jack. That's Frank. That's Nas. Nas, I think you might want to take your victory lap now.
No, man. I can't. It
Nas,
was shitty,
Nas,
dude. Come on.
MVP,
There was
MVP.
offensive line injuries. Receivers were going out like left and right. Like only like a loser fan of a 5-win team would like point out that like when Jordan Love drops back to pass, it's a literal coin flip. Completions, touchdowns. Like I'm just not that guy, you know. Like only a sick bastard who hasn't been to the playoffs in like 5 years would mention that Jordan Love has 5 interceptions in his last 2 playoff games. Like that's I'm just not that guy. Like I'm too classy for that. Like like only a demented freak who's never seen above average QB play would mention the fact that the Packers have now lost 3 games in a row to end the season. Like that's just in poor taste. That's not who I am, you know? So, hey, hats off. You guys gave a great effort. Fuck you.
I'm so glad you took the high road, Nas, because only sick people would ever mention the things that you did.
Humble. Correct. Informative. That's what this podcast is all about. Being right while everyone else is wrong. And man, Packers fans, y'all need to learn how to handle losing a little bit better. Take a page out of our playbook. All right, learn how to be losers. We'll show you the ropes. Because my God, some of those comments. Take a step back. It's gonna be okay. God, that was fun. That was so fucking fun, guys.
Some of the people in the comment section, I think you need to like look up what an insult is these days.
Oh yeah.
Like, geez, Louise.
Yeah.
I felt like I was back in 8th grade again.
That was a nice time machine back to 2009. That was fun. I'm not gonna lie to you. That was the most fun game of the weekend. And Packers fans who will of course be listening to this because they just can't help themselves while they then tell us, well, who cares what you Bears fans think? It's like, well, clearly you do. Like, we're having a good time watching that game. That was satisfying. That was satisfying. And not just because Nas was right on basically every single thing that he said, but like the Eagles didn't even play that well.
Yeah.
On offense. Like they were.
It was literally 10 on 11.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts was it was like non-existent.
Yeah.
How many throws did he make where there was like a defender within 5 yards of the receiver?
Yeah.
Like I could probably think of like a handful.
He wasn't running. Kellen Moore forgot that he had a 2,000-yard rusher that they held out from last week on purpose to make him available for this game. And the Packers couldn't stop turning the ball over because just Jordan Love had to prove that he was the dude. And I think he proved a lot that it was just satisfying because I think a lot of, I'm assuming Bears fans and Vikings fans and Lions fans who've seen this guy play a lot the last couple of years, more so than a lot of these other teams. I think it kind of just validates a lot of what we've been saying and seeing with him, where it's just like, he's good. Like he's a good quarterback. He's maybe even good's a little too strong, but he could play, right? Like he's a starter. Absolutely. But he wasn't, it was the jump that people were making. Oh, it's Favre to Rodgers to Love. And it's like, whoa, pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about one hot streak, 6-game hot streak that this fucker had.
One playoff game got him $55 million a year for 3 picks.
It's so funny because I feel like we're going to have an episode in the offseason discussing analytics and like stats. And like you can pull stats that make essentially anyone that's in that like above average range to be either horrible or great. But it's like football just isn't that sport. I don't know if it'll ever be. Just because, like play to play, we don't know whose position is what or whose assignment is what. And like, there's just so many more variables in the NFL than there is other sports where you can just sort of look at a box score and say like, okay, he had a good or bad game. It's hard to do that elsewhere, but the NFL in particular is so hard to do that. I say that to say that I don't need any of those stats, whether to like affirm any opinion I have on Jordan Love. Just like you said, I think he's, above average in that range. But just when I watch him play, particularly against the Bears, because that's when I'm like really tuned in, he doesn't scare me like Aaron Rodgers scared me. Let's take some truth serum here. If we were up 4 with Aaron Rodgers with 1 minute to go, we fucking knew that ball game was over. It just was what it was. That's who Aaron Rodgers was. That's who prime A-Rod before the ayahuasca. That's who he was and what he did to us. These are bad Bears teams he's played. And granted, they've won. The Packers have had the better team. But that level of fear of Jordan Love is not there even remotely.
Well, and who was it? Was it who was calling the game? It wasn't Collinsworth.
I don't even remember.
Who was it?
Brady.
Yeah, it was Brady. That's right. Where Brady was like, he was like, "Oh, Jordan Love has the chance to prove himself," and then on the next play, he throws a pick. like I think that was just that summed it up pretty well. Where it's like, again, Jordan Love is not a bad quarterback, because I already know that Packers fans are typing it up right now. Oh, he's the best. He'd be the best Bears quarterback of all time. Yeah, it's the bar is pretty low here. That being said, like you were talking about, Frank, like he's not going to elevate a roster, a pass game. And I know, people are going to blame it on injuries, and they didn't have Christian Watson, and the offensive line got hurt. But you know what? Guess what? Caleb Williams dealt with that all season. Maybe not necessarily on the injury side, but he played with a bad offensive line all season.
No, the injury side hit the offensive line, Jack. They kept talking about we played their backups. We had third stringers in from like week 3 on.
No. I meant receivers.
Oh, okay. I thought you just meant generally. Okay, no, yeah, you're right. No. You're right.
No, but like, and I had Packers fan telling me, well, you can't blame him for X, Y, Z. And it's like, yeah, we can, because that's all we hear about with our quarterback. So if it has to go both ways.
They're just not used to it.
No,
It's like uncharted waters for them.
No, and
you start making those excuses because you've never had to before. And it's like, if prime A-Rod was there with all those receiver injuries, my asshole would be puckered up.
Oh yeah.
That's Peyton Manning with Blair White and Austin Collie.
He would have figured it out.
Yep. Well, and that's a great point that, Packers fans obviously have not had to deal with this, but honestly, it's kind of what Frank and Frank, I remember us talking about this a couple years ago, where it was like, this is what you were asking for from Jordan Love. Like, this is what you were personally hoping for Jordan Love, not necessarily for him to be super god awful, even though that'd be funny, because then they just move on. He's just good enough to get them into the playoffs, but not good enough to advance them to any meaningful games. And also, they paid him $55 million a year to basically do that. Like, it's just, this is potentially worst case scenario for the Packers.
Yep. And now the money was not a part of my prediction and hope, because I would have never forecasted them giving him that type of money. But him being smack dab average and having splitting the fan base already. I mean, Naz, I don't know how many Packer fan friends that you have, but me and Jack have quite a few through these fantasy leagues, and they are arguing nonstop as to whether or not Jordan Love is good. And it's the greatest shit in the world to witness.
I only have a few of them, and I will definitely say the enthusiasm and confidence level has simmered quite a bit. Like, it's been reduced quite a bit in these couple of years that he's been starting. So it's you can kind of feel it. It's like they know. I mean, they've been watching it for 30 years. So like, to their credit, they probably know what it doesn't look like on some level. Like, they're like not used to seeing this. Like, nah, this isn't the way it's supposed to work.
To your point, Naz, we literally had what Frank was talking about. We had people literally debating if he was good or not, and someone literally said, I know what good quarterback play looks like, and it's not this. And so it's fascinating, because I feel like the Packers fans who aren't necessarily out on him yet, which, maybe it's still a little early to be completely out on him, still pretty young quarterback, but those people are maybe just like hoping, like just can't quite accept that what they're seeing is legit. And it's an I mean, it's fascinating watching the Packers fans kind of just have to deal with not Hall of Fame level quarterback play in our lifetime, because obviously we have not, the three of us have not seen that. So
yeah. All right, Jack, we've talked for fucking 30 minutes about the molded cheese ass Green Bay Packers. Can we get to the meat and potatoes of the episode?
absolutely we can. I'm glad you asked, Frank. Listen, fellas, more important than the Packers, the Bears head coaching search is fully underway. Interviews are taking place. We have one half of the Rooney rule solved, checked off, with Ron Rivera being interviewed in person. They have to be in-person interviews. Thomas Brown doesn't count. I've seen a lot of that talk going around. It's an internal interview. Technically, he's still internal, so that does not count as towards that Rooney rule. Mike Vrabel checked off the list. He has gone back to New England, which obviously a lot of us kind of saw coming when Gerard Mayo was fired. One thing I know we all wanted to talk about were the coaches that the Bears are planning on talking to or have already at least started the conversations with. Came up with a few different buckets, a few different categories, being 1, the home run hire, 2, the nice fallback in case that home run doesn't hit, and then our third and final category, absolutely no shot. And I'm sure many of you can guess quite a few names on that list. Fellas, let's start off with the easy one. I think we can all be in agreement. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to say that because Nas, I've never been quite clear on this one. So let's talk home run hire. I'm just going to get mine out of the way. It's Ben Johnson for me. That's take a trip around the bases if they get that deal done. Obviously, there's some rumors to him in Jacksonville, potentially Las Vegas. Frank, I think you and I are on the same page, right?
I'm on the same page as well. I would also, I'll throw it to you, Nas, before we do any sort of deep dive. I would assume he's on your list as well. If so, talk about it. But is there anyone else? That's my only home run on the list. Vrabel would have been one, but he's no longer an option.
Okay, so from the weekend, there's been some chirping about some other coaches that could be traded for that are also on my home run list. So Ben Johnson is the unequivocal number 1. Mike Tomlin, if we traded for him. And if we traded for Matt LaFleur.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Kevin O'Connell. Matt LaFleur didn't even cross my mind.
The Kevin O'Connell thing is pretty clear to me that that's just the agent trying to get the extension. I don't think that's an actual viable thing. But, you know, when we were talking about Jordan Love, about whether or not he was good or bad, and Packer fans debating it, something I've also heard a lot of conversations about is whether or not Matt LaFleur is a good coach.
Oh, yeah.
And in my opinion, he would be a great fit for a Chicago Bears team because of the offense that he runs, the efficiency in which he runs it at. And, you know, not for nothing, the guy's 3-5 in the playoffs. You know, Packer fans, maybe it's time to move on, you know, like, fuck that guy. Like, he's can't be that good. Just send him our way, you know, like, whatever. Like, we'll take him. Because Frank, you and I are on the exact same page with this. And Jack, I know like you want that, but Jack's standard's just a little bit higher than ours, I would say, after all these conversations. I just want watchable, good offense. And you know what? If LaFleur was available in a trade, I would take it in a heartbeat because that would pretty much guarantee that.
Yeah.
And the guy's got like a 66% win percentage. So like we're gonna win games while watching good offense. I could live with that. You know, as a second level coach, I'm not fully convinced once it gets to the playoffs and those little details. But at least I know we would be good.
100%. I think that's a really good segue into why Ben Johnson is my only home run. I didn't consider Tomlin because I just don't think it's realistic. He would be on my list. Obviously, LaFleur would be there as well. KOC, I think, would too. But Ben Johnson, to me, like when I think, let me start with my philosophy of hiring just a coordinator that's never had a head coaching job just yet is to be elite at what you do. There are only 2 guys that when I look at this list that have not had, the second one is Brian Flores. He's had a head coaching job, but as a DC and as an OC, this is pretty much as elite as it gets. Ben Johnson, 3 years of top 5 offense. I think 2 of those years were top 3. 3 years as a play caller. And I know, the argument is, or I guess like a negative against him that's trying to be used as, well, he has an elite offensive line and this and that. It's like, but that wasn't always the case. Like, that thing was built with him there. So he sort of helped build this thing and develop that thing as well. The question marks come with him, obviously, of like, can he lead the other side? Can he, the things that we just don't know because he's never been a head coach. But to me, being 3 years as an elite offensive play caller is way more than enough to get you the nod. I mean, for me anyway, because again, maybe my own standards are clouding my judgment with some of this, but Nas, that's been my point for literally like 10 years now. Just give me consistent, watchable offensive football. I will then readjust my standards as they win and maybe lose in the playoffs or whatever. But as of right now, I need that standard to be met, and it has not been met.
Hey, there's levels to this.
Exactly.
I need to get to that
like, let's build
intermediate level before I get, to that.
Get the
top
foundation.
Level.
Yep. Get the foundation, start building the building, et cetera, et cetera. I want to just comment real quick on what Nas said in regards to standards. Like, I am fully on board with a watchable offense, like, absolutely no doubt. But like, if we can get all of what you're talking about in one, like, let's do it. And I feel like Ben Johnson is the best avenue to doing currently. Now, obviously, if you have an opportunity to get Mike Tomlin, Kevin O'Connell, he's getting his ass kicked right now against the Rams in a playoff game. Who knows what the Vikings end up doing in terms of contract. Matt LaFleur, if they would, there's no way there's no way that one happens. I would be absolutely shocked if the Packers traded their coach to the Bears, especially one who's been as good as he is with some of the things he's had to work with. I would be kind of shocked if that happened, but obviously I would take any proven coach that has consistently gotten to the playoffs, like those guys that we just mentioned, obviously outside of Kevin O'Connell. I would of course take him as well. But yeah, I mean, if we can get all of the above, a fun offense and a coach that can build a consistent winner, I still think that Ben Johnson gives us that best opportunity, including the fact that you would not have to give up any draft capital, regardless of what that would look like for one of those coaches. So you get the coach and keep your draft picks.
No, that's fair. That sort of next portion of the list, I have 3 guys on my nice fallback if we don't land Ben Johnson.
Let's get to that.
How many do you all have?
I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 10, but
holy shit.
10 fallbacks?
10 fallbacks, but with an amendment to that. 4 of those guys are guys that I could talk myself into. So I'm not necessarily sold on them. Like, I don't think I would be super thrilled, but I could see myself at least talking myself into buying, or at least giving them a shot.
Okay. Nas, how many do you have on your fallback list?
I have 5 on the fallback list. I have 3 could talk myself into on the list, and then a no shot.
Yeah. I have some no shots.
It's only 2 less. 2 less than what I said.
No. You made an amendment. You have 10.
When you phrased it, it sounded bad.
Okay.
I was like, are you doing the interviews, Jack? Because that's what it sounded like.
I've been actually contacted by the Bears for an interview.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Scheduled.
I do, we to the listeners, we're not going to dive into literally the whole list of coaches that the Bears have contacted, have interviewed already or will interview. But I do want to make sure we hit some of the names. So I want to name off my 3, and maybe we all take one as to like why, because I would assume that these would be at least on the fallback. Especially Jax. Everyone's on fucking Jax. Okay, here are my 3 fallbacks. Pete Carroll, Mike McCarthy, Brian Flores. Are those 3 also on your guys's?
Yes.
Wonderful. I named them in order. I feel strongest about Pete Carroll being the number 1 fallback option for me. I can lay out my case why I think he would damn near be a home run. I would paint the ideal scenario, obviously, but do you all feel do either one of you all feel strong about McCarthy and Flores to present sort of a similar case as to why that would be a nice fallback?
I know Nas apparently loves Mike McCarthy, so I'll take Mr. Flores himself.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make the case for McCarthy.
That sounds wonderful. Should I start with Pete Carroll?
Good.
Great. Okay. I honestly, when I think of the cons of, the whole list, his con is the most, I don't want to say petty or like minute, but it's really only age for me. Like, I look at him in a very similar manner in which I looked at Mike Vrabel, obviously much younger, but then also Mike Tomlin. Guys who are CEO types, guys who, I mean, all of them are obviously defensive head coaches, but they just raise the floor. I mean, Jim Harbaugh was in that, obviously, he may be a notch higher, but just in that same mold of, it really doesn't matter who's there year one. The fundamentals are going to be there. This is going to be a team situationally that's going to be very good. I mean, the guy's record in Seattle was 137, 89, and 1. That is by far the best head coach of our lifetimes if he was the Bears head coach with that record. I think about the structure that he provided and how he helped develop Russ, a third-round pick who, I mean, listen, this has probably been said a million times in regards to Pete Carroll, but the fact that they went out and got, who was the quarterback they got from Green Bay, and they cashed him out?
Matt Flynn.
And I was going to say Matt Castle. I knew it was one of the Matts. And they cashed him out, and Pete from day one, maybe not literally day one, but like training camp was like, nah, I don't care how much we paid this guy. Russ is the dude. Like he's our starter. Those types of brash decisions, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Nas. That type of shit is needed in Chicago. And that's something that I don't know that Ben Johnson is capable of. That's not a con to him. He just doesn't have the experience. I'm talking about real world, actual lived experience with Pete Carroll. And so my ideal scenario, the guy's fucking 85. Like he's going to run for president in 2028. So he's got that. But in football terms, he's old. So age is the only concern there. In my ideal scenario, he's here for 3 to 5 years, if, health permitted. And I think about that similar structure that was provided to Russ. I think of, in terms of a prospect, Caleb's ceiling is higher than rookie and rookie deal prospect Russ. And I think of molding Caleb Williams into what Josh Allen has become, what Lamar Jackson has become. I don't mean like perennial MVP. That would be phenomenal. But I mean like a guy who the young, hot offensive coordinator is raring to go because they know that's their ticket to be a head coach. You are the system. You've become the system. And I think when I'm looking at the whole list, Pete Carroll may be the only one for sure that can provide that. We project a little bit with Ben, and he's still my number one, probably by far and away. But we kind of know what we have with Pete Carroll because of his experience. That's why he's my number one fallback guy. If there's any sort of pushback or you want to add to those points, I'm certainly open to that. Because I think we can all sort of popcorn as we're doing it. But what do you guys think about Petey?
My fear is that this is John Fox. Sorry, Jack. My fear is that this is John Fox again. It's a different era. The defensive fall off from Carroll. Once the Legion of Boom started getting older.
Yeah.
That was really like 2 drafts that they just really, really hit on. And then it didn't really happen again. And you can't really play that style of defense without a very specific personnel group. The offense lacked imagination. All of a sudden we needed to let Russ cook, and then we let Russ cook, and then there was more fall off, and then all of a sudden Russ is out of there. The evaluation of players dipped quite a bit. He's definitely someone who needs input on personnel. I don't know if the Bears, I don't know how the Bears would be able to do that because they've just never let the head coach take full reign like that before. Pros that you didn't mention, he is thinking about the entire composition of the team.
Yep.
The moment he got that Seahawks job, the first thing he did was get an adequate returner. He traded for Leon Johnson. Does that sound? Leon Washington from the Jets. He traded for him immediately. Like, he made sure the kicking game was going to go a certain way. He made sure they played a certain style of football that was complementary to the defense that they were playing. Like, he is taking the whole game into consideration with every personnel move. We haven't had a coach who's done that in a while. So
yeah,
those are some pros.
No, they were. And before you go, Jack, I will say the one thing that I think we all are betting on with any of these coaching hires is that they're dealing with the quarterback prospect that has a chance to be a top 3 guy, which they haven't necessarily. Jared Goff has been very good. We're talking Ben Johnson. Russ, obviously, in his prime was very good. I don't think any of them ever had the ability to be top 5, top 3. Fringe top 10 for sure. I think prospect-wise, tools-wise, you're dealing with a different beast. And we should have probably prefaced that with all the lists, but go ahead, Jack. I did want to make sure I mentioned that.
Yeah, I'll be quick because you guys hit on a lot of it. I like Pete Carroll. I think there was a lot of Bears fans who would be not super thrilled if that was the decision they went. I am not one of them. My biggest concern, and Nas brought up a lot of them, my primary concern with Pete Carroll is time. Because a lot of what the Seahawks made the Seahawks work took some time, right? Like, he didn't get to Seattle and just start making Super Bowls. Like, it took some time. How long is it going to take for him to get things up and running the way that he wants to? That's a lot, like Nas said, he needed the Legion of Boom. We have a very good secondary, but obviously we do not have the Legion of Boom type secondary. We do not have Bobby Wagner. We do not have Marshawn Lynch in the run game. Like, there is a lot that would need to go into Pete having that type of success that he had in Seattle. Obviously, you are, like Nas said, you're getting the CEO of the sideline, which is what all, that Matt Eberflus said he was and just ended up not happening. You're getting a leader of men, right? I think he's a great at relating to players. Players loved playing for him. Even Richard Sherman to this day is talking about how he'd be a great fit for the Bears head coaching job. So I think that goes a long way. He masked up a lot of things that didn't make Russ or that he helped get Russ to where he could be and kind of hid some of those flaws. So again, it for me, it's just time, and especially with the age thing and kind of where this roster is at. We've paid a lot of players. Feels like we're kind of ready to win now. How long would it take to get that vision in place? And again, that's not something we'll know. That's something that Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles will have to kind of adjust to. So that would be my concern with Pete, though I'd be happy if he was hired.
For sure. Now, I will say, can we all agree to this here, just a blanket statement? If we lose out on Ben because someone else offers something that we can't, it is what it is. Like, it would suck. It would sting. If we pick any of these other dudes, like if we legitimately pick, if this is like a Bruce Arians type of situation, we'd all be pissed, yes? Regardless of who's on the fallback list?
Yes. Can you rephrase what you just said?
What I'm saying is like you remember Bruce Arians and Mark Trestman? Where Bruce was like, he thought he had the job and he was raring to go and going. If that's Ben Johnson in the situation, we're like, nah, we'll take Pete or whoever else is on the fallback list. We will all be pissed. Yes.
Fact.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. I also wanted to make that clear. Nas, I want to know, because you're higher on Mike McCarthy than either of us two are. Granted, he's still my second fallback. I would not be upset. I would like you to present the case of Big Mike coming to Chicago if we lose out on on Ben Johnson.
Okay. This is a Caleb-centric pitch. Okay. Number one, he's worked with 3 Pro Bowl quarterbacks: Favre, Rodgers, Dak. 2 of the 3 career years with them, and had them in what a lot of people would call pre-prime and prime. Dak mostly is prime. 288 and 174. He's going to the Hall of Fame as a head coach. He's a Hall of Fame head coach. 11-11 playoff record, but I'm not as concerned about that as I am with the development of our quarterback. And if there is anything that we can take away from his almost 20 years as a head coach, is he knows how to get the most out of his guys. And I think that's reason alone to put him on this list as a nice fallback. I don't really do. I think there's concerns with how much he kind of subcontracts the defense.
Oh,
yes. Do I think that he ignores like the special teams, like the kicking game, and strategically how to do that? Yes, I do. Do I think his time management kind of blows? Yes. Do I think he struggles to prepare his teams for big games? Yes. These are all concerns of mine, but those are all far behind my concern about developing the quarterback, which with his track record is as much a guarantee as any other coaching candidate that is out there. You can say Ben Johnson is up there, but Ben Johnson has never had a bad offensive line. He's never had bad skill position players as a play call. So there is an unknown to Ben that there is not when it comes to Mike McCarthy. So for that reason, he falls into the nice fallback list for me. And I think that's a pretty good case. Like, I don't think any of us would be like that upset or disappointed if Ben takes the Raiders job and we get Mike McCarthy. I don't think that's a bad scenario for us. I've talked myself into it.
I'm going to push back just a little bit on just what you said. And then obviously, Frank, if you want to jump in on what Nas said as well. It's nothing you said, Nas. It's just I do think there would be quite a few people who would be absolutely upset if that is the route that we decided to go, just because of a lot of the things that you mentioned, game management. It's just going to be that is the definition of a floor raiser move, right? Like, we kind of know what his ceiling probably is, but the floor that he would bring alongside developing the quarterback, developing certain skill players, things like that, like on the offensive side, like if you were to tell me, oh, hey, we got Ben Johnson, and Mike McCarthy is going to be his OC, or just whatever, something like that, I would be all in. And I think a lot of Bears fans would be too, because you know what you're getting from the floor perspective. But from the ceiling perspective, I think that is what's going to limit and temper a lot of excitement, potentially, if that is the route they decide to go for Bears fans.
Yeah, I am. First of all, he meets my minimum threshold of a watchable offense, and like Nas said, probably developing the quarterback, because he has the track record there. Or maybe not development's the right word, just nurturing an environment where they thrive. I think that's the better, because I don't know if he's necessarily developed a young guy, but he knows how to play to their strengths, which is a huge positive. The one pushback I have, Nas, is when you brought up Ben. I agree. Some of those things we'd have to figure out, where he's, how good he is with the lesser offensive line and things. But the one thing that's really in his favor to me is that he never misutilized the weapons that he did have. So I'm thinking of like even someone like Khalif Raymond being a big part of that offense, not this year, but years prior, is like they used his speed, they did well, they did misdirection stuff. And I think that's what sort of catapults him in comparison to someone like Mike McCarthy. But no, he fits the bill for me for just straight up offense only. So Nas, I know you said that Pete Carroll sort of gives you John Fox vibes. I don't know why I'm getting that. It's nothing against Mike McCarthy, but I'm getting that from Mike McCarthy versus Carroll for me. And it could just be because we just had this fucking hit segment of like, what is so Chicago? It would be so Chicago that Mike McCarthy comes here with this immense track record of helping quarterbacks thrive, and it just all of a sudden NFL defenses have just totally caught up, and he's horrible. And I can't shake that. But then on the flip end of that, I feel like I have like an angel and a devil on my shoulders. I also feel like this, maybe it's a stretch, but this could be kind of a Andy Reid type of thing. Andy Reid was looked at a type of way before he left Philly. And I always thought it was a bit unfair because the way we talked about, maybe Jared Goff having a certain ceiling and the other guy, Donovan McNabb had a certain ceiling. And Andy Reid squeezed every bit of juice out of that quarterback and out of that offense. But for whatever reason, well, let me not say for whatever reason. they were ready to move on from him, and I thought that he was unfairly treated on the way out. And I was okay with them moving on. I totally understood it. It's sort of you outstayed your welcome, but he was never a bad coach that they tried to make him out to be, or like the problem, like they tried to make him out to be. And that's like that's the angel on my shoulder being like, Mike McCarthy could be the Andy Reid in this scenario. In this scenario,
I think it's very possible. Like, I don't think there's anything that you could say about what Mike McCarthy's tenure would look like that I kind of wouldn't believe. But the scenario you just laid out feels like a better chance than what happened when John Fox was here.
Yeah.
And the reason the Pete Carroll, John Fox parallel is there for me is because those guys are energy locker room guys. Like, even though Pete Carroll is a good overall game strategist, he's not like an X's and O's guy the way Mike McCarthy is offensively.
Yep.
Whereas John Fox is very similar. Like, he ran his system. It's like, we're going to play this way and this is the way we got to play. But like, because I'm a leader of men and like the way we're going to run this team, we're going to run it a certain way. And the ripple effect is going to lead to success. That is kind of like the Carroll vibey that I'm getting. Like, Carroll obviously much more energetic, but like, it's really about the atmosphere he's creating in the locker room that people are endorsing him for. Whereas Mike McCarthy, it's like, now I want this guy specifically because of the X's and O's, because of who we have at quarterback.
God, I wish he could be our OC.
It would be nice. I mean, there's just no shot. He's a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah, he's not taking an OC job.
No, but way. it like if he was Pete Carroll's age and he wanted to be like an assistant head coach, or like what a lot of teams around the league have done, I think it would be just awesome. Like a young head coach paired with an older veteran coach who has that experience, who could help with some of that operational stuff. It would just, that to me would be perfect. I know we wanted to touch on Brian Flores. He's currently getting his ass kicked by the Rams in this playoff game here. So I'm not going to talk too much about him. I still would be okay with Brian Flores, fellas. I know there's a lot of negative things about him. It's just, it would be a very different coach, I think, than what we've ever had here in Chicago. Not necessarily from a defensive perspective on that side of the ball, but he would definitely be one of the more aggressive defensive play callers that we've ever had, in especially in our lifetime. You obviously have questions. Things with Tua did not go very well. He went through a lot of offensive coordinators. What would that plan look like? Obviously, a huge part of the equation for him. But I think if you're just looking for your defense, because that clearly feels like the bigger strength of the two sides currently, before we get to the offseason, what does if you're just looking to get wins, I think this Bears defense would fit pretty well with what he would try to do, and just that aggressive nature. Like, look at what he did with this Vikings defense, with just some of these guys, these no-name guys who they just picked up, and they're phenomenal. It's been a phenomenal defense outside of getting punked right now by Sean McVay, which obviously is going to happen in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's just the offensive side of the ball that obviously raises a ton of questions. And of course, did he really learn, right? Like, did he learn from his experience with Mike Tomlin? Did he really learn from his experience with Kevin O'Connell? Did he learn from his mistakes that led to him getting fired in Miami, and of course then suing the league for what he felt was wrongful termination?
Yeah.
Giant questions for that.
No, it is. And I think that's a good segue into some of the things that I had, because you touched on just the aggressive nature of the defense and sort of pulling up the unknown players. From 2022 to 2023, that defense went from 31st in the league to 16th and they made changes in a negative way. They were getting rid of salary because they thought they were going to be rebuilding and retooling. And then this year they're 5th in the league in points per game. I didn't get a chance to look at anything deeper than that, but just watching them play, watching that aggressive nature, watching the confusion that it's caused everyone but Matthew Stafford here apparently this season. He falls in that category of, if you're only a coordinator, granted he has had coaching experience, I need you to be elite. He's an elite defensive coordinator, so he's worth a second shot. This is really the only thought that I had in terms of the cons, because you touched everything else, Jack, and I'll throw it to you, Naz. The whole Tua Tagovailoa debacle. It's kind of like the angel and devil again on my shoulders. The angel is like, yeah, you got to like help a young quarterback out. You've got to, make sure that he develops and sort of foster that environment for him to thrive. And then here comes fucking JD Vance on the other shoulder. And he's like, Tua's kind of a pussy. Like, Brian Flores was there to win ball games. And who did he win ball games with? With the fucking backup. And it just was what it was. And even when he started Tua, he couldn't have faith in him, and he had to bring him in to close the game. Ryan Fitzmagic was in there playing closer in the fourth quarter, winning ball games for them after Tua had terrible games. So I have this weird sort of thing going on with that, and I don't know. I will say I do think Caleb would take to harsher coaching and like rhetoric way more than Tua would. You just listen to him at press conferences, and he's pretty sensitive. Like, he was up at a press conference getting sensitive about reporters commenting that he looked a little pudgy one of these off seasons, like Tua,
or that he should be wearing the Guardian cap.
Yeah, or the Guardian cap. Like, Tua, get off your phone first of all,
them.
And second of all, like, grow a fucking pair, man. What are we doing here? MAGA 2024.
I don't know about that, but
go ahead, Naz. What are your thoughts on Brian Flores?
Well, Frank, you kind of like took my take a little bit there, because I was gonna say a couple things about Flores. One, the Dolphins, history of winning over the last 30 years, not a ton.
Yikes.
Okay. Stephen Ross, I think, is still the owner. They have been pretty much a shit show the entire time he's been there. So they could have a right coach in the building, and I wouldn't put it past that organization to fire the right coach. Like, I don't even know, him getting fired, do I even think that's Flores' fault? Well, he was honest about what Tua could be, and we have a great offensive mind there, and Tua's not even that good with that great offensive mind.
That's what I was going to say.
And two great skill guys, right,
yeah.
Jack?
Yeah, like literally two, like what Frank was just talking about. Like, they brought in the exact opposite guy from Brian Flores, Mike McDaniel, like a guy who will literally put Tua up on a pedestal. He'll do whatever it takes to put him in a comfortable situation. He's a good guy. People they like playing for him, et cetera. And what? They just missed the playoffs. And granted, he was hurt. Like, Tua has been hurt, and that's been a big part of that story. But even when Tua was healthy, they weren't playing well. So, yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, it was just Flores making an evaluation, being honest about it, and the owner didn't like what he was hearing. This is not unlike what happened to my boy Jimmy Butler in Minnesota, in Philly. And it's just like, Tobias over me? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, the thing, if anything, what I would maybe hope Flores learned is, if you're going to give your opinion about a problem, hopefully have the answer.
Yep.
Because that, I think, not having a solution for their issue is probably what really led to him being out of there. And honestly, the over involvement of the owner, thinking Tua was actually good. And like, let's not get it twisted. It hasn't been a great job for any D coordinator that's been down there. Vic Fangio didn't last more than a season down there. He's hanging out with Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore and is having more fun, guys. Think about that for a second.
we were talking about John Fox a lot, and his name has popped up quite a bit today. Did not expect that. Did not have that on my 2025 bingo card. But it kind of feels like maybe that was kind of like a John Fox situation, right? Like, the head coach just didn't want the rookie quarterback that they selected.
It could have been, yeah. No, it
right?
could have been, but
They
so, I think Nas
there was
made.
another guy selected right after him that everybody thought should have gone to Miami.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, it could have been as simple as I'm trying to win games now,
Yep.
and this guy is not helping us do that.
Yep.
Like the Tibbs way, like the way Tibbs would just never fucking play rookies, like
Billy Donovan,
and just bury them unless he
Matas
absolutely
Pazulis.
had
Shout
to
out.
play them. Yeah, and it's
Shout out
just like
Matas. My boy.
and
White chocolate, White Thunder.
and Flores just refuses to do that. Yeah.
No,
I got Nas. That's
agreed.
my tip of the cap tonight.
And that sort of triggered a memory though of Brian Flores, that he was there to lose games. Like the accusation is in the lawsuit that he was being paid extra money for losses, and he just was not going out like that. And those rosters weren't superbly talented, and they were competing because he's really good at what he does defensively. But I think Nas made the best point. We don't know how much roster control he would have, if any, if he comes to Chicago. But if you recognize a problem, you got to have a plan to fix it. Identify it and speak to the players and try to get them better. But you can't just, I'm not saying he did that in Miami. Who knows? But you can't just identify the problem and be like, all right, that's the problem, and let's go. It's not how you solve it.
He was probably used to the New England way where they're brutally honest about evaluating their team. He probably is like, Tua sucks. We're not going to win with him. And the owner was like, no, I love Tua. He's like, well, he sucks. So it's like, can I tell you a story about real quick that how this kind of relates to my day job as a teacher, right? And this kid came up to me. This was last year, and he goes, "Yo, this kid just cursed at me while we were playing basketball." And I was like, "Okay, like let's go sort it out." And he goes, and I just go, "I'm not gonna say his name. I will call him. We'll call him Artie. Artie, did you swear at JoJo over here?" And he's like, "No, I didn't." And JoJo's like, "Well, you said I suck at basketball." And Artie goes, "Well, you do suck at basketball." And it's like he's just being honest. Like he's just got, he's just being honest. You just didn't like what he said. Like, and it's just Flores just kind of suffers from that a little bit because of how he got brought up as a coach. But if he's the head coach here and they allow him that autonomy to be brutally honest with his players, it could create a culture of accountability and really get us headed in the right direction.
See, that's what, and that's where I think the Bears, especially this roster, which this roster has a whole lot of other issues than just maybe not being that good at football. It's like they need somebody who will make them take that accountability, and if they don't, he'll find somebody that will. Because I mean, how many times did we hear the players talk about, well, we need to be coached harder and we need to execute, we need to be coached up on the little things. It's like, well, what are you doing to do that? That's literally your job. So I think behind the scenes, I think Flores can make a big impact in addition to that defense. But obviously, again, you do just have to question what that offensive plan would look like for developing Caleb when, are we just going to be, Tyson Bajan's dad's going to be knocking down that fucking door with those big ass arms, asking to get his kid in there if they're, they start 1-3 or whatever. Like how would he handle that? Fellas, I think those are the three big names that I know a lot of Bears fans have been talking about this coaching search, but I do want to get to some of these other names, and I don't feel like we have to spend a ton of time on them, especially if we have some different names. So I'll run through the remaining three that I had on my nice fallback, and we can debate those, or you could give me some of yours. I have Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator of the Lions. Really quick, I just love the job that he's done with those injuries that they've had on that defense. It's been super impressive what he's been able to do. Cliff Kingsbury, just that offense, what he's been doing with Josh, with Jaden Daniels, again, just super impressive this year. Would love to see what he could do with Caleb Williams. And then Todd Monken from the Ravens. I know he obviously has two of the best players in football to call for an offense, and that's obviously makes things a lot easier. But I just love the commitment to the run that he calls, and I think it's something that I would benefit Caleb just huge. It would be huge for that. So again, I not my number one pick, but a pick that I could definitely get behind.
That's a good segue, Todd Monken, is to another philosophy that I do have. And this is a very recent one as I've sort of delved through, and it won't be a long one. I'll throw it to you, Naz. Todd Monken, and I don't know if Joe Brady is on any of our lists because I don't think he's leaving, or we haven't even requested to interview him, but both of those guys are the examples of this. When I described what I think Pete Carroll could make Caleb Williams, or maybe even Mike McCarthy could, is like, you are the system now, and the young hotshot, quarterback coach comes to call plays for, as OC for you. I don't trust Monken or Joe Brady, because to me, Lamar is the system. And with Joe Brady, Josh Allen is the system. And it's so hard for me to sort of parse through and say, well, the point of him sticking to the run, I get that. But even that to me is a bit of sleight of hand, because who's not sticking to the run with Derrick Henry at running back? He's the workhorse. But it's not to disparage your point. You're right. He's done a phenomenal job. But for me, when I'm trying to analyze what I want out of a potential head coach, it's so hard for me to separate it at that point. I mean, because we kind of saw it on a smaller level with Nagy. He called 4 fucking games for Kansas City. Everyone's like, oh my God, Mahomes is great and he's the OC. So again, some of this is like being a scorned Chicago fan, and I will own every bit of that. But those two in particular, I could not get behind. Naz, were there any ones that you wanted to touch on, whether that Jack touched on or have not been touched on yet?
I think Monken went for someone I could talk myself into to a no shot.
Oh man!
Only because you can't get credit for revitalizing someone who won an MVP 2 years before you got there. Like, what the fuck are we talking about? Like, Lamar's doing we're all acting like it's different. It's like Lamar's doing the same shit he did when he won his first MVP. All right. He's just doing it better because he's gotten better because he's worked hard, and he's got Derrick Henry.
And they have legit receivers and
he's got legit targets to throw to. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, I would fucking lose my mind if that dude ended up being the coach. I truly would.
I love it.
Like, fuck that.
Well, then I want it to happen even more. He's also a little bit older too, right? He is older. So,
fellas,
it's just no.
I have two that I am being so shallow about. I'm being so shallow that I did not bother to even look into what their history was, who they've coached in the past, what, their, actual role. Do they call plays? Do they not? The first one, and this is the absolutely not, I will jump off a fucking bridge with my cat if they get hired. One is Drew Petzing, because the fucking noggin on this fella is like an Ed, and Eddie jawbreaker. It is the most egregious thing I've ever seen in my life. And that's coming from a fella with a bald, pretty big head. But it's a ratio thing. His eyes are like where my cheekbones are. And it's just nothing but fucking jawbreaker from Ed, and Eddie. That is ridiculous. There is not a leader of men or a play caller or whatever he would do here that would succeed in the head coaching role. Number 2 is Mike Kafka. Not only because the Giants offense, I mean, what the fuck are we talking about? But 2, the eyebrows on this fella are, you could not tell me he would stand up in front of a room of 53 plus men in a locker room when they're down 14-0 at halftime in week 1, and he's going to inspire any sort of change or make the necessary adjustments with those eyebrows. I mean, I think the worst eyebrows I've seen, the only pair of worst eyebrows that I've seen are Eugene Levy from Schitt's Creek. It is insane how bad. Like, those two, I'm being shallow, and for those reasons, I'm out.
Well, what's funny about those two specifically, and there was a game that I wanted to play, and I just think it might just take too much time, unfortunately. And it basically was just going to come down to, is this a Kevin Warren interview or is this a Ryan Poles interview? Both of those dudes are Kevin Warren interviews. You just look at their background. Drew Petzing, he was with Kevin Warren when he was in Minnesota. Mike Kafka, he's a Big Ten guy. He went to Northwestern. All we hear about is how good of a coach he is and how smart he is and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, look at the Giants offense. All they did was throw it to Malik Neighbors. I mean, I guess you give a little bit of credit to Tyrone Tracy and them developing him like that. That's not awful. Mike Kafka was on my list of I could talk myself into just because of that. Like, there are some good things about him, but that both of those just feel like Kevin Warren interviews. Like, he just wants to his own guys, and I don't like that. I don't want anybody who is related to Kevin Warren or who Kevin Warren wants, unfortunately.
That is fair. There's a name that we had not touched on that I think, Nas, you probably would be the good person to talk to about I'm surprised he didn't come up earlier. And this may be the last deep dive, because I do want to end with, if you all have one, because I have one that's so perfect, for what would be the most Chicago hire of this cycle. There is one man, and we all may agree, and that's fine, and it is what it is, but there's one man here. But before we get to that segment and end the whole thing, Nas, you're higher on Art Smith than I think Jack and I. That's not one that's like totally no, I'm out. It's one that would come with some red flags, but I if I had to talk myself into, he would probably be on that list. Nas, can you talk about Arthur Smith and why you wouldn't do bodily harm to yourself if he was hired as the Bears head coach?
He's on my fallback list.
Oh, I was gonna say I figured he would
like
be.
Him.
Yeah,
I do like him. Okay, the guy won 7 games 3 years in a row with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke at quarterback. That is no easy feat. All right, when you're trying to win games, you put him in that offense as constructed this year with Penix when they draft Penix. Let's just say they invested in a actual legitimate defensive line player, defensive player, not in the draft, but using the salary cap money that they use for Kirk Cousins, and you have him drive that offense. I'm almost like 99% certain that the Falcons are an 11-win team, at least. So, and then he somehow gets all of the leftover juice out of Russ to get this team into the playoffs with like nothing outside of George Pickens. Like, no disrespect to Najee, but he ain't it. Jaylen Warren, he ain't it. Like, this he is making like a gourmet meal out of like, no disrespect, out of like old school Aldi products. Like, it's wild. So I just think if you actually gave this guy a legitimate shot with real weapons and a real quarterback, he could make something happen. And he's got head coaching experience. So like a lot of times when we get first-time head coaches, you just never know what you don't know until you're on the job. He's now been at the helm of an organization. So he can take his experiences from that. He can bring his run-oriented offense, which I know I want a guy who can sling it around, but that is just not what's going to win here routinely year by year. We do need a strong running game, an offensive line that pushes people around, and that guy can produce a solid running game for whatever personnel that we have out here. So I just think he would. I think that guy deserves another shot. I don't think he got a fair shake. Their front office is shady as fuck in Atlanta. And I like Raheem Morris. You think he's a better coach than Raheem Morris? Like, no shot. There's no shot. Just given the way that team's constructed. I just think.
Yeah.
All right. I've elevated him. I'm elevating him.
I was just gonna say that was a good.
Back.
That was a good presentation.
That was a good
and one thing that came to mind though, Nas, was because my biggest concern with Arthur Smith was I'll put it in quotation marks, the misutilization of some players. I still think he misutilized Bijan that last year, or the only year he had with him. I would have liked to see him utilize him more. But the other, like, he got blamed a lot for Kyle Pitts. And oh, brother, does that guy stink. Like, the stink is off of Arthur Smith from that, because he's just not nearly the player.
He was using Jonnu Smith, who's clearly the better player.
I was going to say, for a reason. Yeah, like, and it's unfortunate that it can take sometimes, like, you know, a coach being fired or leaving or whatever the situation is, that we realize that, you know what, maybe he was right about that one particular case there. And he was with Kyle Pitts. And it's not that Kyle Pitts is bad, but Brock Bowers is what Kyle Pitts was supposed to be from the gate. Right. And he's been not even he's not even been close to that. That's the way the white man plays tight end. You know what I mean?
Dallas Clark
Smith
2.0.
Art Smith, we're gonna get a deal with Rumble, baby. I'm just gonna keep throwing those in there and wait till Charlie Kirk listens, and we're fucking in. Okay. Is there anyone else that you all feel strongly about maybe presenting a case? If not, I would. I'm telling you, I have the perfect Chicago signing, because the more I looked into the guy, it just makes so much fucking sense.
I want to I'm not going to present the case because I know how I feel about it. I am curious how both of you would feel if the Bears, Ben Johnson, he goes to the Raiders, a couple of these other guys go elsewhere. It is what it is. If they rehire, or not even rehire, I guess, but if they just stick with Thomas Brown, is there any world where you're buying in whatsoever?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, and it's because
don't go deeper than that.
Okay.
We know why.
Okay.
We know. I just wanted to make sure that we all were in agreement that Thomas Brown is not. It's just not. It wouldn't work. It just would not work.
Yep. So honestly, like the offseason's so fucking long, we may even delve in maybe like next week or the week after if we don't have a coach already. Like this is why Thomas Brown, because there's a lot of points I think to be made, and some aren't his fault, but it is what it is. Okay, here is my Chicago hiring. We've seen his name pop up early and often, baby. It's your boy Anthony Weaver. Now, when his name first popped up, I mean, who the fuck watches Dolphins games? We just talked about how soft Tua is. It is what it is. But then I looked into him, like, why is he popping up? He popped up elsewhere. Let's dig into it. That defense has been pretty fucking good statistically this year. Like this is the best Dolphins defense since 2006. So it's essentially 20 years that this guy's been able to, and it's not because of how bad it was. They're top 10 in most statistical categories. I think overall they're like the 6th ranked defense. That's awesome. That's sort of what we're talking about when it comes to Brian Flores and these other defensive guys that we may not, be totally out on. But then I delved a little bit deeper, and this is the first year that he's ever called games. This is a first-year defensive coordinator who, when he's up at the podium, reminds everyone of Mike Tomlin or just whatever you think is the ideal leader of men. He kind of has that. And we're hearing all this chirping about the leader of men, the guy who's going to lead the locker room, and they're going to sell you on what he did as a defensive coordinator, but after just 1 year, and it all just sort of molds into being the most Chicago hiring, not just because we missed out on other guys. I envision a world in which Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren tell us about how they brought in 40 fucking people into the room and how proud they were of this process. And yeah, Ben Johnson was there and he wanted to come here, and all the, Schefter saying like, yeah, Ben Johnson was sort of left at the podium. He was, the Bears got cold feet on him because they were worried about blah, blah, blah. And, even Pete Carroll and so, but they were high on Weaver the whole way. And, it came to a point where they didn't even want to interview him a second time. That's how good Anthony Weaver was. The Zoom call was good enough for the boy. Like he's rocking and rolling. He is the leader that we need. Like I see there's a word, like what I just painted there. We all can see that, right? We're not rooting for it, but that is so Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, kind of ticks a lot of boxes, honestly. One thing, and look, a lot of our listeners would probably expect Frank to say something like this. Jokingly or not, I'm not quite sure anymore. I think I've kind of lost the plot when it comes to Frank and some of his comments. I do kind of wonder about them wanting a black head coach.
Jack, let's teeter here, buddy.
Whoa.
Not necessarily. No. Like,
I'm looking at Dolphins defensive stats, and my eyes get big,
wide as dinner plates. I do think the Bears took a lot of pride in having just top to bottom a black organization, right? Like when they promoted Thomas Brown, they have the team president is African American, the GM is African American, the assistant GM is African American, the head coach was African American, the play caller. Like they took a lot. The quarterback, they took a lot of pride in that. To be real, and I do wonder if that is something that they're, whether it's unconscious or conscious bias, that is something that they would consider. I would obviously caution against the first-time head coach, defensive play caller, I should say. We just did that with Matt Eberflus, and it's great that he put up some good numbers in 1 year calling plays for the Dolphins, but ultimately it didn't really lead them anywhere. Yeah. So, like that is something that But when you say that, Frank, like it would be very Chicago. Obviously defensive focus, all that good stuff. If you were to ask me right now, and maybe I will ask you both this as well. If you were to put $1,000 on the top 3 coaches that will be hired by the Bears, I personally would put Ben Johnson, Mike McCarthy, and Anthony Weaver.
My 3 is similar. Mine would be Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, and Anthony Weaver.
And not that I'm advocating for those like that necessarily, that wouldn't be my top 3. I'm just saying,
yep,
right now, those are the 3 that I see this specific season ending or this coaching search ending with. Those 3 finalists.
What would be your 3, Nas? Just the sort of so Chicago, where there's smoke, there's fire 3.
I don't really have a 3. It's more of a 2. I've pretty much decided it's going to be Ben or McCarthy.
Oh, wow.
And I would say Anthony Weaver is sitting outside of that top 2 bubble into the next tier, because I do not think that they're going to hire another first timer.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine being in this scenario and self-promoting how this is the most coveted job in the league, and then getting a guy that's never done it before. Like, that PR move doesn't make enough sense. If Eberflus was not a first-time head coach, and Nagy wasn't a first-time head coach.
Well, technically, McCarthy would be the only head coach with previous experience that they've hired.
Like Ben's like the bell of the ball.
Right.
Like,
right. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying, like, Mike McCarthy, that would be a first-time hire by the Bears, which is crazy in itself, because all they do is hire first-time coaches.
Well, yeah, he would only be the second. John Fox was the first ever head coach with NFL experience before.
Wild.
It is.
It's crazy.
Can I just say too, though, because we're rearing to an end, and who knows who makes it here. It is very funny when a liberal feels a little shaky, because Jack went from black to African American real fucking quick. It is what it is. I don't make the rules.
Well, how come I didn't hear a BIPOC in there, dude? Come on.
I'm surprised I wasn't cut off at the knees before I could make my comment. But I am being dead serious about that. Like, I really do think that's something that is important to not only Kevin Warren, but just that Bear. Like, it was something they were proud of, and they promoted in season.
I think they should be proud of it, to be honest.
Absolutely.
I mean, like 80% of the league looks like their front office. There's a great thing to take pride in.
Right. You have, and you can contrast that with the absolute mockery of the Rooney Rule that was made by the New England Patriots, where they included in that little graphic the two.
They got both of them out of the way.
Like, they couldn't do separate ones.
That may have been a joint. That may have been a joint interview. They may have all hopped on a webinar.
Like, you guys got 20 minutes. Let's knock these out real quick. Like that. like compare that to what the Bears are doing, and I think it's just like I know the Bears are catching a lot of flack for how long of a list that they have, but I feel like you do have to respect at least a little bit about the way that they're handling their business, and they're not just they're clearly taking this process seriously, which I guess you could argue based off of who they're interviewing right now, but I don't know. I think it shows that they're putting a lot of thought into this process. And for people who are like freaking out that they're interviewing or requesting to interview Marcus Freeman or whoever is added to the list at this point, you can't hire Ben Johnson until the Lions are done. So you might as well just keep talking to people. You got the time, continue to talk, get notes, compare. Yeah, maybe it is a little bit long, but at least at the end of the day, they're taking this process seriously, which I think is kind of what we all wanted. Last thing I want to say, and I think we can close the podcast here, unless you guys have anything else, any other coaches you want to talk about. Really quick, I do want to talk about Ben Johnson because that is obviously the story here in Chicago. When is he coming? Are we going to get him? Can we keep him away from the Raiders, et cetera, et cetera? don't quite get the case for Ben Johnson to the Raiders. I understand the involvement of Tom Brady, which presents a whole other issue with him calling that Lions game this week coming up here. Like, what access is Tom Brady going to have to Ben Johnson?
None.
He can't.
That's been disproven. He's not. I mean, there could be some back channel shit, of course, that's everywhere. But in terms of like formal in the meetings for the production, he can't be involved.
Which is how it should be.
Yep.
But the case for the Raiders, it's like toughest division in football. You're coaching against Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, Sean Payton, 3 of the best coaches in the game right now, Pat Mahomes, Justin Herbert, a really good Denver defense. And you'd be going to a Raiders team where, he'd have a lot of control and a lot of say in player personnel. But currently, Aiden O'Connell is the quarterback and they don't even have a top 5 pick in a draft that I think is pretty weak at the quarterback spot. So to me, the Raiders, I mean, sounds great, but ultimately, I would be shocked if he chose the Raiders over the Bears.
I think the one thing you touched on is obviously control. They would probably be willing to give him full reign. They may not even get a GM. It may just be him in that role. So that would be one. 2 that you didn't touch on is it could just be money too. I mean, if someone just straight cashes him the fuck out, the Bears aren't doing that, unfortunately. They're not going to blank check him like we all want the Bears to. I think the second thing is maybe Ben Johnson's philosophy with going to the Raiders is my fingerprints are all over this, and maybe ego's at play. Maybe he's just a fucking artist and he knows he gets a blank canvas because that team is horrible. That's a bare bones team. He gets to build it the exact way that he wants. Losing in the first year, maybe 2, is inevitable. But as I build, this is all me versus if he goes to even like Jacksonville, he would be, or he would be credited with turning Trevor Lawrence around. And in Chicago, he'd be credited with like propping up this young quarterback. And that's not his guy. I'm not making the guy. I think that would be a silly thing, the mindset to have, but I'm just saying that could also be at play and being sold to him going to the Raiders. But I agree with you. That's I mean, you talk about poverty franchises. We know it because we're one, but I mean, Jesus Christ. It's that's beyond worse than what we've dealt with.
I mean, the best job is the Bears' job. I could see 2 things. I could see 3 things that you could throw at Ben Johnson for the Raider job. Vegas is one. I don't think like the proximity of Vegas to California is like a big part of that. Vegas in and of itself is awesome. The brand new facilities, the countless amount of money that they've made since moving there. Like there is nothing under the sun that they can't buy for their team facility wise. And then Brady, if he's pitching it, well, the way I would think he's pitching it is like, we're going to build this like step and like lock and step together. We're going to build through the offensive line. We're going to build it the right way. And we're going to approach it. They're going to give him a 6-year deal. I'm positive of it. He's not going to have to worry about job security. And like, that's the pitch I would make to Ben Johnson if I'm the Raiders. We're going to go.
I mean, would we be shocked if Mark Davis gives him a 10-year deal to get the thing done? He gave Gruden a 10-year deal.
They're going to be paying coaches till we're fucking
I don't know.
This is crazy. It's just
I'm not saying it would happen. I'm just saying your shock level I don't think would be very high. That's all I'm saying.
With that haircut, he's doing what it takes to win.
His supermodel wife didn't even know he was a billionaire. Did y'all know that?
It's just like, Jesus Christ. Like, is Brady's pitch like, hey, listen, I know we don't have a quarterback. I'll fucking strap it up if you come here. Like, is that his fucking pitch?
I mean, but Brady wasn't Brady anymore at the very, very end.
Brady wasn't Brady until he was Brady.
That's true. That is true. No, I don't see what you could pitch. Again, unless the money is through the roof and like the thought of total control and like literally starting from scratch is a good one to you.
But you're in the just like
I get that
division to be in, you know what I mean?
I get that, but the NFC North is nothing to sneeze at either, though. Like if we're doing like that division's better.
What are you talking about? The Packers are frauds. The Vikings are frauds.
I guess you're right.
And the Lions are about to lose frauds. They're about to lose both of their coordinators.
Oh,
Yeah, that
Jesus
too.
Christ, the fucking libs fight back here. Holy shit, I just got...
All right, hold on. We played this game a few months ago when we were desperately calling for Matt Eberflus to be fired.
Uh-huh.
We played this game. Which quarterbacks would you rather face twice a year? Pat Mahomes, Bo
that's fair.
Nix, Justin Herbert, or assumedly JJ McCarthy, Jared Goff, and Jordan Love.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I mean, maybe Sam Darnold goes with Ben Johnson to Vegas because I don't know if they're going to be. I don't know if they're going to be paying him.
I don't know how you could
weeks.
not want the Bears job.
Right. You're in Chicago,
Well,
dude.
That's the thing. That's what's
playing
gonna,
around.
That's what's gonna make missing out on him that much worse because Kevin Warren is a bozo. Like
if we do miss out, he was never. He sucked the entire time.
Oh yeah,
and we'll talk ourselves into Mike McCarthy and or Anthony Weaver, or any of these guys that we've mentioned, Drew Petzing, and we'll do what we always do: win the offseason, question a couple of moves, and then get to training camp, be like, this offensive line looks like shit.
Yeah,
but we're still going to win 11.
Another guard to play center.
We're still going to win 11 games. You know. We'll still talk about winning 11 games and making the playoffs and beating the Packers.
Yeah.
That's what we always do.
Fuck yeah. Well,
is Ryan Bates still on this team? Is he still
Jack
on the
Seed,
roster?
here's the portion we just got to end the podcast so we start going off. What do we do? You're bringing up Ryan Bates on...
Fellas, when back in 99 when Dick Geronimo was coaching.
No. Stop the count. Stop the count.
All right, I'm leaving this.
No, this you know, it's going to be a long few weeks, obviously, until or whenever I guess the Lions lose, because I know Mike Vrabel has already been hired, but that doesn't feel like the big domino to fall. Like every NFL fan kind of saw the writing on the wall as soon as Mayo was fired. That's where that was going to take place, and the Patriots did what they had to do to get that done. So Ben Johnson is really going to be that big giant domino to fall, and hopefully it's to the Bears because he's our home run hire. So it's going to be a long wait, but at least we have some fun playoff games to keep us busy in the meantime. Fellas, let's keep an eye out for Marcus Freeman getting those interviews. Matt Campbell. No, we didn't touch on David Shaw, all those dudes, because there really wasn't a need to. This has been the House of Halas podcast. I'm Jack. That's Frank. That's Naz. We appreciate you guys for listening. As always, thank you guys so much for the support on TikTok and Instagram these last couple weeks. It's been absolutely crazy. Appreciate you listening, and we will talk again next week.
Later, y'all.